Hello everyone, welcome to my channel.
Halloween night descended upon the small town of Ravenswood, enveloping it in a blanket of fog and foreboding. The air was filled with the scent of fallen leaves and a faint aroma of witchcraft. Jack-o'-lanterns glowed in every home, their mischievous lights casting dancing shadows on the windows, and children in a variety of costumes, from friendly ghosts to bloodthirsty vampires, cheerfully roamed the streets, knocking on doors in search of sweets. But not for everyone was this night filled with carefree fun. In the old, dilapidated mansion on the outskirts of town, known as Blackwood Manor, young Emily felt a chill run down her spine that had nothing to do with the autumn coolness. Blackwood Manor was cursed, or so the local legend claimed. Rumors spoke of strange sounds emanating from its walls, of shadows flitting in the windows, and of the inexplicable disappearance of its last mistress, Lady Eleonora Blackwood, many years ago. Emily, a young and fearless artist, had come to Ravenswood to rent the mansion for Halloween, hoping to find inspiration for her new series of painting. She was drawn to the grim beauty of the old house and its eerie reputation. She sat in the spacious living room, where the furniture was covered with white sheets, like ghostly figures frozen in time. Outside, the wind howled, and the old trees swayed like bony fingers scraping at the glass. Emily tried to focus on her sketchbook, but her thoughts constantly returned to the stories she had heard about Blackwood Manor. The locals had warned her, strongly advising her to stay away from the place, but her curiosity was stronger than her fear. Suddenly, a creak. Emily flinched and looked up. The sound seemed to come from deep within the house, from somewhere above. Her heart pounded faster. She tried to convince herself it was just the old house settling in the wind, but the feeling that she was not alone grew stronger. She picked up a flashlight from the table and resolutely headed towards the stairs. With each creaking step of the old wood, her resolve diminished, giving way to mounting fear. Shadows danced around her, creating illusions of moving figures. On the second floor, the corridor was plunged into deep darkness. Emily's flashlight picked out old portraits on the walls from the gloom, stern faces of long-dead Blackwoods, their eyes seemingly following her. She passed several rooms, each closed and holding its own secrets. Finally, she stopped at the last door at the end of the corridor. A coldness emanated from it, penetrating her skin, despite the house having no heating. There was no handle on the door, only an old iron bolt that looked as if it hadn't been touched in decades. Emily felt an inexplicable pull towards this door, as if an invisible force was drawing her in. She ran her hand over the cold wood, covered in a layer of dust. The bolt was rusted, but to her surprise, it yielded. With a loud creak that echoed through the house, the door slowly opened. A musty smell erupted from the room, a mixture of old dust, mold, and something else, something more sinister that made Emily recoil. She aimed the flashlight beam inside. The room was absolutely empty, except for one item, an antique mirror in a carved frame standing in the corner. Its surface was cloudy and covered in cobwebs, but Emily felt that the essence of the house's mystery lay within it. She cautiously entered the room, her footsteps barely audible on the dusty floor. Approaching the mirror, she tried to wipe away the cobwebs, but they seemed to be part of its very surface. When she looked into the mirror, her reflection was distorted, as if she were looking through thick water. But it wasn't this that struck her most. Behind her reflection, deep within the mirror, she saw another figure. It was a woman in an antique dress, her face pale and her eyes deep and sad. She looked as if she were made of mist and shadows. Emily recoiled, her heart pounding wildly in her chest. This was the ghost of Lady Eleanora Blackwood, the house's vanished mistress. The ghost was silent, but its eyes seemed to plead for help. Emily tried to convince herself it was just a trick of light and shadow, but fear permeated her to the bone. She turned to flee, but the door through which she had entered slammed shut with such force that a crash echoed through the house. Emily realized she was trapped. Panic began to engulf her. She rushed to the door, trying to open it, but the bolt was locked, and no matter how much she tugged at it, it wouldn't budge. She turned back to the mirror. The ghost was still standing there, its face full of sorrow. Emily felt that the apparition was trying to tell her something, but couldn't. Suddenly, the mirror began to glow from within. The cloudy surface cleared, and Emily saw images changing within it, like pages of an old book. She saw Lady Eleanora, alive and beautiful, in the arms of a young man who was not her husband. Then she saw Lord Blackwood's angry face, his eyes burning with fury. The scenes changed quickly. Secret meetings, hot whispers, then arguments, screams, and finally Lady Eleanora, standing before that very mirror with an expression of terror on her face. The last thing Emily saw was a man's face distorted with malice and a shadow raising a knife. The mirror went dark, leaving Emily in complete darkness. She realized that the ghost of Lady Eleanora did not want to scare her. It wanted to tell her story, a story of murder. Lord Blackwood had killed his wife, and then, most likely, hidden her body so that no one would know of his crime. But where? Emily looked around the empty room, trying to find some clue. She ran her hand over the walls, over the floor, but found nothing. She looked at the mirror again. Perhaps the key was in it. She touched the cold surface. At that moment, she felt a slight gust of wind, though all the windows in the room were closed. Suddenly, on the floor next to the mirror, Emily noticed a small crack in the wooden floor. She knelt down and struggled to pry up a board. Beneath it was a small hiding place. Inside lay an antique leather-bound diary and a rusty key. The diary belonged to Lady Eleonora. Emily began to read, and each page revealed an increasingly tragic story. Lady Eleonora was unhappy in her marriage to the cruel and despotic Lord Blackwood. She found solace in the arms of a young gardener, and their love blossomed in secret. But their affair was discovered, and Lord Blackwood, driven by jealousy and fury, coldly murdered his wife. The last entries in the diary were written in a trembling hand, describing her fear and premonition of doom. She wrote that her body would be hidden in a secret room in the basement, the key to which she had hidden. Emily picked up the key. It was heavy and cold. She looked at the door. Perhaps this key would open it. She tried to insert it into the lock, but it didn't fit. It wasn't a door key. It was meant for something else. She reread the last lines of the diary. A secret room in the basement. The basement. Emily realized she had to get to the basement. But how to get out of this room? She rushed back to the door, banging on it and shouting, but no one answered. The house was empty, and her cries were swallowed by its dead silence. As hope began to abandon her, she noticed something else. On the wall next to the mirror, beneath a layer of dust, was a faint drawing, a small engraving depicting this very house, and on the engraving, a secret passage was shown, marked by a small arrow. Emily ran her hand over the wall at the indicated spot. A small protrusion was felt under her fingers. She pressed it, and a part of the wall slid away, revealing a narrow, dark passage. Emily, without hesitation, entered it. The passage was dusty and narrow. The air within was heavy and stale. She walked forward, illuminating the way with her flashlight, until she found herself before a spiral staircase leading downwards. She descended cautiously, each step creaking under her feet. Finally, she found herself in the basement. The basement was vast and gloomy, filled with old furniture, boxes, and dusty coverings. The air smelled of dampness and something else, something heavier, that made Emily feel nauseous. She walked among these objects, searching for the secret room. She ran her hand over the walls, trying to find anything unusual. Finally, in the farthest corner of the basement, she found another door, hidden behind a pile of old sacks. This door was made of thick oak, and it had a heavy iron lock. Emily took out the key she had found in the diary, and to her relief, it fit. With a loud click, the lock opened. Emily opened the door. Inside was a small room, absolutely empty, save for one thing, a stone coffin that stood in the center. The walls of the room were covered with old, faded frescoes depicting scenes from Lady Eleonora's life, her wedding, her secret meetings, and finally, her death. Emily approached the coffin, her heart pounding like crazy. She lifted the lid. Inside lay a skeleton, dressed in the remnants of an antique gown. On the skeleton's finger was a sapphire ring, the very ring Emily had seen on Lady Eleonora's finger in the portrait. Emily felt a wave of relief. She had found Lady Eleonora's body. Now justice could prevail. She closed the coffin and began to look for an exit. She returned to the basement and found the stairs leading up into the house. When she ascended to the first floor, the house seemed different. The air was lighter, and the shadows no longer seemed so sinister. Emily felt that she had completed her mission. She called the police, reporting her gruesome discovery. The next morning, when the police arrived, Emily told them the whole story. The investigators were skeptical, but when they descended into the basement and discovered the secret room with Lady Eleonora's body, their doubts vanished. The investigation was reopened, and, thanks to Lady Eleonora's diary, Lord Blackwood was posthumously accused of murder. That same night, as Emily packed her belongings to leave the house, she re-entered the room with the mirror. The mirror was clean, free of cobwebs, and her reflection was clear. But beyond her reflection, she saw another figure. It was Lady Eleonora, but now her face was calm and happy. She smiled at Emily, her eyes shining with gratitude. Then she slowly dissolved into the air. Emily understood that the ghost of Lady Eleonora had finally found peace. Emily left Blackwood Manor, but the memories of it stayed with her forever. She painted a series of pictures depicting Lady Eleonora and her tragic story. These paintings brought her fame and recognition, and Blackwood Manor, after its curse was lifted, became known as a place where souls find peace. Every Halloween, the residents of Ravenswood remember the story of Lady Eleonora and the brave artist who helped her find peace. And if you ever find yourself in Ravenswood on Halloween night, you might hear the whisper of the wind, which, they say, carries Lady Eleonora's words of gratitude, for she has finally found her eternal rest. In the end, Emily not only found inspiration for her paintings, but also uncovered a long-standing mystery, bringing justice to a long-dead soul. And though Blackwood Manor would forever remain in her memory as a place where she confronted the supernatural, it also became a place of healing and inspiration for her. Thus, the scary Halloween story ended not just with fear, but with a victory over injustice and the finding of peace for those who had long awaited it. Emily, a young artist, proved that even in the darkest places, light can be found, and even the oldest mysteries can be uncovered if one has enough courage and determination. And since then, every Halloween, when the jack-o'-lanterns are lit in Ravenswood and children in costumes run through the streets, knocking on doors. Some of them, passing by old Blackwood Manor, feel a gentle breeze, as if an invisible hand touches them, reminding them of those who lived and died in that house, and of the one who helped them find eternal peace. Emily returned to her studio, but not as the same person. The experience at Blackwood Manor had changed her. Her paintings became deeper, filled not only with beauty, but also with wisdom gained from confronting tragedy and mystery. She became a voice for those who could not speak, and her art became a bridge between worlds. Blackwood Manor, once a place of fear, was transformed into a symbol of hope and retribution, thanks to an artist who dared to look beyond the veil of mystery. She felt that her mission in Ravenswood was not a coincidence. She was led there by an invisible force, perhaps Lady Eleanora herself, seeking help. Emily became part of this story, its guardian, and her brush became a tool for immortalizing the truth. And now, every year on Halloween, Emily returns to Ravenswood. She doesn't stay in Blackwood Manor, but she comes to it to place a bouquet of fresh flowers at its doorstep. This is her tribute to Lady Eleanora, her way of saying thank you for the inspiration, for the wisdom, for opening her eyes to a world beyond the ordinary. She looks at the old house, which was once full of fear, and now emanates tranquility. Shadows no longer dance in the windows, and the wind doesn't howl so eerily. Blackwood Manor, once a symbol of a curse, has become a symbol of redemption. And if you listen closely, you can hear a faint whisper carried on the wind on Halloween night. These are not ghosts. These are not spirits. These are the voices of those who remember, who believe in justice, and who know that even the darkest stories can have a bright ending. Emily, meanwhile, continued to create. Her paintings, inspired by that night, became a profound reflection of the human spirit, its struggles, sufferings, and ultimately its finding of peace. She painted not just portraits, she painted souls, and each of her works was dedicated to those who, like Lady Eleanora, found their voice through her art. And so, the story of Blackwood Manor, which began with horror, turned into a legend of hope, justice, and the power of art. And this legend is passed down from generation to generation in Ravenswood, reminding everyone that even on the darkest Halloween night, the light of truth will always find its way, and souls seeking peace will surely find it. All thanks to one brave artist who was not afraid to look fear in the eye.
Good night. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel.